Guess what time it is? Time for my top 10 books of the year. Let's go! Welcome back to the channel. Obviously, we are doing my top 10 books of 2024. This is quite the list. I'm going to be honest with you. I was really shocked because I really felt like I was going to struggle, putting, together how this was going to shake out. But lo and behold, I was pretty good. As you know, I keep an Excel file with a lot of different stuff that I'm working on for the channel, and I keep records of all my books, and I keep records of all the books I read and how I score them. So this was much easier than I thought. Now, I will preface and say, there's always people when they do these lists, they have certain rules and caveats, but there's just one caveat that I have this year is if a book was a part of a series, a part of a trilogy, and multiple books in the series were in this list based on how they scored, I would only pick one, and it would be the highest one. And so, with that being said, I think it gives me a very expansive list of 10 books here, and I'm not totally half the list is one author type thing. So, I know other people I don't care if it's multiple authors, it is what it is. I'm going to let the scores dictate themselves. And for here, I did have a handful of books where I could have had a couple authors take up multiple spaces, and I just didn't feel like that was the right thing to do. I read a lot of books this year. I'm going to eclipse over 150, and I figure I wanted a good representation here. So with that being said, we're going to jump right into this thing because I know these lists can be a long time. So I'm going to give you the list, where the book ranked, the score, and a little blurb, and we're going to move right through this thing. So let's jump right in. At number 10, we have Hostage by Robert Crais. This thriller book really surprised me. It was my first foray into Robert Crais as an author, and I want to thank Professor X. He's the one that recommended this for me, and this was phenomenal. Phenomenal. At the number 9 spot, also at a 4.7, we have Half a King, which is the first book in the Shattered Seas trilogy by Joe Abercrombie, this fantasy trilogy. This particular is the first entry, and it is stupendous. Stupendous, because you get a lot of politicking, you get characters that you fall in love with, even though they're treacherous. It sets up a trilogy that just surprises you. This does not read like YA at all, in my opinion. So you should check this out. At the number 8 spot, another series that I completed this year, Matthew Scudder series. We're talking All the Flowers Are Dying, book number 16 in the Scudder series. This was the first book that I really felt like Block in the Scudder series gave us a main antagonist where we got to see in the mental mind, and we got to see his points of view and hear him talk and write, and it just gripped me hard. I really enjoyed this one. Book 17, the final book in the main series from Lawrence Block on Matthew Scudder, was also good. This one just hit all the highs for me. At the number 7 spot, another long series that I also caught up with this year was the Prey series by John Sandford, and this entry is Ocean Prey. I rated this a 4.7 as well. This is book number 31 in the Lucas Davenport series. It is also a Lucas Davenport and Virgil Flowers book, which is Virgil Flowers is a recurring character. He also has his own series, which I'm going to be reading some in 2025. So be on the lookout for those. But this particular entry is just fantastic. I knew I was going to say fantastic. But Virgil, Lucas, they have this major case. He uses Virgil undercover. They're down south, and the next thing you know, the plot of this is so good. The antagonists are really good. You get Virgil and Ray and Lucas. It just really works really, really well. You should check this out. It's fun, fun, fun. At the number 6 spot, and probably the biggest surprise in my reading this year, this book was very decisive. There was a group of people that were like, I love this book, and there's a group of people that it's not for me. There's very few people that are in the middle, and I put this book off from reading it for a long time because of that. But because I was working my way through this author's complete collection, I read it, and that is Tommyknockers from Stephen King. I was shocked. Now, I understand why a lot of people are dissuaded by this book, because the middle part of this book is about 300 pages, and a lot of people get bored and just like, yeah, that's not for me. I understand why King wrote it the way he did. First 200 pages are just gripping and grossing. Then you get this 300-page, what people call a slog, and then the ending's really good as well. The confrontation, the conflict, it's the climax is really done really well, but the middle part really turns people off. I understand why he did it. It makes sense to me. I think it adds to the dread and the sense of urgency around the climax. Otherwise, I think it would have felt a little flatter. But most people don't like that. They don't like to be slogged 300 pages. But I get it. I mean, it's a 750-page book. So, we're now at the top 5 of my reading of 2024. And at a 4.75 in the 5th spot, we have Cain and Abel from Jeffrey Archer. I believe this may have been the first or second book. It's the second book, because I read Not a Penny More, Not a Penny Less from Jeffrey Archer. But this particular entry is the first book in a trilogy called the Cain and Abel trilogy. This book is Cain and Abel. We get to meet Cain and Abel, 2 kids with different lives and grow up differently. One with a silver spoon, one dirt poor and struggling to survive, and their lives cross. And they cross in the United States in a very dramatic way. And how Archer tells this tale through this trilogy is just fascinating. You definitely should check this out. Archer reminds me a lot of Kinl. A lot. Definitely worth your read. At the number 4 spot, a lot of expectation reading this author. This was my first foray into this author. He's mainstream. He's everywhere. People love him. And I had high expectations. So for him to deliver and get on this list is a huge accomplishment for me, because I grade pretty hard. But this is Elantris by Brandon Sanderson. There's a lot of entry points to Brandon Sanderson's Cosmere, and I went with Elantris. Some people said that. Some people said other books. I'd have some other books from Sanderson sitting on the shelf that I want to get to in 2025, and I will. Sanderson's writing is right up my alley. It is great. His pacing, his plotting, it's all really solid. And the characters are great. And that is one of the things you hear more and more about with his Stormlight Archive, which is a huge book arc that he's doing. And his new book just launched. And so Sanderson's everywhere. And I have to say, with all the expectation in reading one of his books, he lives up to it. He does. He writes a good book. You should check out Sanderson. At the number 3 spot, and I was going to have a short story collection on here. How can I not? You know how much I gush over short stories and talk about them ad nauseum. And so with that being said, I had a lot to choose from. But in terms of rating, this was my highest short story collection. The Hidden Girl and Other Stories by Kinl. Yes, I got this signed by Kinl. That doesn't mean why it's on here, because I graded this and read this before then. However, I did meet Kinl in October. He signed this particular copy for me, and I'll show you again. There it is. But with that being said, these stories are just so good. I could have put his other collection, the Paper Menagerie, its short story collection, on here as well. It did qualify, but I dropped it out because I only wanted one short story representation. And this one, again, was the higher rated book. So these stories are so good, though. You should read. He talks about a lot of different themes in here, from AI to future worlds. It just is so much. And they're gripping, absolutely gripping. You should definitely check out Kinl if you haven't. At the number 2 spot, and you knew that this book would be represented on this list. It's the sentimental pick. I talk about it all the time. I've read it multiple times. I'm probably lost track of how many times I've read this thing now. But at a 4.9 out of 5, at the number 2 spot, we have Jurassic Park by Michael Crichton. This is the book where I think launched my reading career. When I read this as a senior in high school in advanced biology, as part of the class, and I was just gripped. I flew through the thing, and the next thing you know, I was visiting Barnes & Noble almost every other weekend buying books. And so I credit this. It's a sentimental pick. I know I've read it multiple times. If I do this top list again 5 years from now, it might not be on the list. It might not. As I read more and more and find new favorites, it might not be on the list. But for now, it's solidified its number 2 spot on my list. And at the number 1 spot, and if I haven't gave it away, you must be sleeping. But this is, to date, my only 5-star rated book on the channel. Now, I could have put a number of books on here from this series, but this is by far my favorite one, and that is Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire, book number 4 in the Harry Potter series. This was a 5-star read for me. It hit everything. It had a great opening. You had Voldemort. It had the plot, the kids' development. It had chaos. There's just so much I could go on and on and on about, and you should check out my review on this thing. It is just a phenomenal book. Harry Potter and the Tommyknockers were probably my biggest surprise. Yes, I got to credit Meredith. She's the one that recommended this. I read this and gave me crap because I hadn't read any Harry Potter, and here I am doing my top 10 list at the end of the year wearing a Gryffindor stocking cap. And yes, I have a Harry Potter plushie in the background. I'm still an adult. I mean that. But Meredith was right. As much as that tastes like vinegar, this series is great. It is. Even though it's YA, it is fantastic. I flew through these things this year. This is still, today, my only 5-star read on the channel. Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire. And that is my list, my top 10 list. Let me know in the comments below, what are your favorite books of the year? I'm interested. As you know, I keep a long list. Like every other booktuber or every other reader out there, our lists, our TBR lists are ever growing. We're never going to read them all. It's almost laughable, but we got to keep putting books on the list because people recommend them. But I hope you got a lot from this. Again, drop me a comment. Let me know what your top reads are. I hope you have a great rest of your day and a great week, and I'll talk to you all in the next one.